had a pretty extreme mispricing on the coal front. And a lot of things were misunderstood about it. So we went into that. So basically, metallurgical coal, which is what is used to make iron and steel, we will be using that 50, 60 years from now because there's really no substitute. And those stocks were trading at like 2 times earnings. They were doing massive buybacks and so on at 2 times earnings. Doing buybacks at 2 or 3 or 4 times earnings is really good for your health and your wealth.
Wow. How was that something where you knew about the coal industry from the past, or how did that hit your radar in the first place?
I don't have any original ideas, Devya. Everything is cloned from somewhere, like my buddy Bill Gates. He also has no original ideas. We're very
Yeah.
similar that way. I'd seen a filing by David Einhorn where his largest position, this was in first quarter of last year. So that filing came out middle of May 15th or something. And his largest position was a company called Consol Energy, which is a big thermal coal producer. I just basically wanted to answer one question for myself. I said, why is David Einhorn so hot and heavy on stupid coal? And so I went down a rabbit hole to try to answer that question. And I emerged from that rabbit hole, massive coal bet, because it was just such a no-brainer. And one of the things about coal is that, I don't have any endowment money or anything in my fund. But if I had some of those guys in the fund, they would have exited because of all the ESG mandates. And so we have a lot of irrational kind of behavior in terms of what people can and cannot invest in, which leads to mispricing of some of these securities.
That makes a lot of sense. Did you talk to David Einhorn at all?
I didn't speak to him. I just basically went in and just said, okay, let's try to understand what is going on. And I'd seen some commentary he had made. His complaint was that these companies that he's buying that are really cheap from a valuation perspective, because of all the, emphasis on the big seven tech, et cetera, they are kind of left by the wayside, right? Nobody's really interested in these companies. And he was kind of moaning and groaning in some of these public comments of, well, how do I get paid? How do I get paid when I own these names when no one's interested? The answer was you get paid when they buy back stock. Valuations are very low. And Consol is an interesting company because they forward sell all their production at least a year in advance. So we already know, for example, in 2024, even though it's a commodity, we already know within a band what their cash flows in 24 are going to be because they've already sold it. They've already said what the prices are. We already know what their costs are. And that's a business which says that 100% of discretionary cash flow, they canceled the dividend, is going to buybacks. So we had a company that had a 1.8 billion market cap last year, that north of 600 million in earnings last year, pumped into buybacks. So that's very potent.